I never thought the person who used to tuck me in at night and promise that we would be best friends forever would be the same person to throw my bags onto a rain-soaked driveway and tell me I was never actually part of the family. My older sister, Sarah, didn't just take the house after our parents died. She took my identity, my security, and my sense of belonging, all because of a piece of paper that said I was adopted while she was biological. Standing there in the dark, watching her change the locks on the home I had lived in since I was 3 days old, I felt a level of betrayal that I can't even put into words. Was I wrong for fighting back the way I did, or would you have burned every bridge just like I ended up doing? I really need you to tell me if I'm the villain here, because by the time this was over, nobody was left standing. Understand how we got to that night. You have to understand my parents. They were the kind of people who didn't believe in the word adopted. To them, I was just their daughter. My dad, Mark, was a high school principal, and my mom, Alina, was a florist. They had Sarah naturally, but after some complications, they couldn't have more children, so they brought me home when I was just a tiny infant. Growing up, there was never a distinction. Sarah and I shared a room, shared clothes, and shared secrets. She was 4 years older than me, so she was always my protector. When kids teased me in middle school, she was the one who stood up for me. When I had my first heartbreak, she was the one who stayed up all night eating ice cream with me. We were a unit, or at least that's what I thought. Our parents worked incredibly hard to build a life for us. They bought a beautiful 5-bedroom Victorian home in a quiet suburb, and they always told us that this house was our legacy. No matter what happens in the world, my dad used to say during Sunday dinners, you two will always have this roof over your heads. They were planners. They had life insurance, they had savings, and they had a will that they mentioned often, ensuring that everything would be split 50-50 between their 2 girls. But then the unthinkable happened. It started with my dad getting a diagnosis that rocked our world, and my mom, who couldn't imagine a life without him, fell ill shortly after from the sheer stress and grief. We lost them both within 6 months of each other. The grief was a thick, suffocating fog. I was 22, just finishing my degree, and Sarah was 26, working in real estate. During the first few weeks after the second funeral, we leaned on each other. We cried in the kitchen, we looked through old photo albums, and we tried to navigate the mountain of paperwork that comes with death. But as the fog began to clear, I noticed a change in Sarah. It started with her taking over all the conversations with the lawyers. She told me not to worry about it, that she had it under control because of her background in real estate. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? She was my sister. But then, I noticed she started moving my things. First, it was my childhood trophies being moved to the attic. Then, she suggested I move into the smaller guest room so she could turn my bedroom into a home office for her business. I felt a pang of hurt, but I told myself she was just mourning in her own way. Then came the day of the formal will reading. We sat in a mahogany-paneled office, and the lawyer looked at us with a somber expression. He pulled out the documents, but Sarah looked strangely calm, almost smug. As he started reading, my heart stopped. The will he was reading wasn't the one our parents had talked about for years. It was an older version, dated from just before I was legally finalized in the adoption process, which had somehow become the only valid copy the lawyer could find. In this version, everything, the house, the savings, the life insurance, was left entirely to Sarah as the sole heir. I looked at Sarah, expecting her to be as shocked as I was. I expected her to say, "This is wrong, we know what Mom and Dad wanted." But she didn't. She just nodded and said, "That makes sense." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I asked her right there in front of the lawyer what she meant, and she looked at me with a coldness I had never seen before. She told me that biological blood matters more than anything, and that since I wasn't technically their daughter when this was signed, I didn't have a claim to the family estate. She told me I should be grateful for the years of free housing I'd already received. The walk back to the car was a blur. When we got home, the mask completely slipped. Sarah told me I had 1 week to pack my things. She said she was planning to sell the house and use the equity to jumpstart her own luxury real estate firm. I pleaded with her. I told her I had nowhere to go, that I was still finishing my final exams, and that this was my home too. That's when she said the words that will haunt me forever. She looked me in the eye and said, "You were a charity project, Maya. Mom and Dad were kind people, but you aren't a real member of this family. You're an outsider who overstayed her welcome. I want you out of my house." I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to find the real will. I knew my parents had updated it. I remember them signing something 3 years ago at the kitchen table. But Sarah had been the one to clean out their filing cabinets while I was busy at the funeral home. Every time I tried to search the house, she would follow me, making sure I didn't touch anything. She even hired a locksmith to change the deadbolts while I was out at an interview. When I came home that rainy Tuesday, my suitcases were sitting on the porch, and the door was locked. So that is the situation I was in. I was homeless, grieving, and completely betrayed by the person I loved most in the world. I was being told that my entire life was a lie because I didn't share their DNA. Before I tell you how I found the proof I needed and the absolute nuclear option I took to get my revenge, I want you to pause right here. Go to the comments and tell me, what would you have done? Would you have walked away and tried to build a new life? Or would you have fought for what was yours, even if it meant destroying your only living relative? I really want to know if you think Sarah's argument about biological blood has any merit at all, or if she's as monstrous as I think she is. I didn't stay on that porch for long. I took my bags and went to a friend's couch, but I wasn't defeated. I was livid. I knew my parents, and I knew they wouldn't have left me with nothing. I started thinking about my dad's habits. He was an old-school principal. He didn't just keep digital files. He kept physical backups of everything, and he was a man of secrets and hidden compartments. He had an old desk in his office at the school where he worked for 30 years. Even though he had retired a year before he passed, I knew he still had a storage unit where he kept his old office furniture and personal records. Sarah didn't know about the storage unit because she hadn't bothered to look through the small key ring Dad always kept in his bedside drawer, the one I had tucked into my pocket the day he died. I went to that storage unit at 2 in the morning. It was freezing and my hands were shaking as I tried the keys. Finally, the shutter rolled up. Inside was a mountain of boxes. I spent 6 hours digging through old textbooks, lesson plans, and photo albums. And then I found it. It was a heavy, fireproof lockbox. Inside was a manila envelope labeled for my girls. It contained the updated will, properly witnessed and notarized, dated only 2 years ago. It explicitly stated that the estate was to be split equally. But that wasn't all. There was also a letter from my father addressed to me. He had written it when he first got sick. In it, he apologized for not being there to see me grow up further, and he mentioned something that made my blood run cold. He wrote, "Maya, I know Sarah can be competitive and sometimes harsh, so I've made sure the house cannot be sold without both of your signatures. I wanted to make sure you always had a place to live." I didn't go to Sarah with this information right away. If I had, she would have just tried to destroy the document or tie me up in court for years. Instead, I went to a lawyer of my own, a fierce woman who specialized in contested estates. We did some digging and discovered that Sarah had already listed the house for sale and had even accepted a massive cash offer from a developer who wanted to tear it down and build luxury condos. She was planning to take the money and flee the state before I could ever challenge the old will. She had lied to the real estate board, claiming she was the sole owner and that there were no other heirs. She was committing fraud. I waited until the day of the closing. Sarah was at the title company's office, ready to sign the papers and walk away with a multi-million-dollar check. I walked into that room with my lawyer and the fireproof box. You should have seen the color drain from her face. She tried to act like she was happy to see me, saying, "Maya, what are you doing here? This is a private business meeting." My lawyer stepped forward and handed the new will and the deed restrictions to the closing agent and the buyer's representative. The room went silent. The buyer's face turned bright red as he realized Sarah had tried to sell him a property she didn't fully own. The fraud was out in the open. The closing was immediately halted, and the buyer threatened to sue Sarah for every penny she had for breach of contract and misrepresentation. But I wasn't done. Since Sarah had already moved most of the furniture out and had basically abandoned her duties as the executor of the estate by committing fraud, my lawyer filed an emergency motion to have her removed and to have me appointed as the sole executor. Because of her criminal intent to defraud an heir, the judge ruled in my favor. I was given full control over the estate. Sarah was ordered to vacate the premises and return every cent she had already taken from our parents' savings accounts. She had nowhere to go because she had already spent her own savings on the down payment for a luxury penthouse, she could no longer afford. The aftermath was brutal. Sarah tried to call me, screaming, crying, and telling me that I was destroying the family. I told her that she was the one who destroyed the family the moment she decided I wasn't her sister because of my DNA. She ended up having to move into a tiny studio apartment and took a job at a low-end rental agency. She lost her reputation in the local real estate community. As for the house, I didn't sell it to the developer. I moved back in. I restored my old room, and I kept the guest room exactly the way my parents had it. I realized that family isn't about the blood in your veins, it's about the people who show up for you. Sarah chose to be a stranger, so I treated her like one. I haven't spoken to her in a year, and honestly, it's the most peace I've ever had. I still feel a twinge of sadness when I see old photos of us, but then I remember the rain on that porch and the look of pure hatred in her eyes when she called me a charity project. I didn't just win back a house, I won back my dignity. Looking back, I realize that some people only love you when it's convenient for them. The moment there's something to gain, their true colors come out. I lost my parents, which was the hardest thing I've ever gone through, but losing my sister showed me who I really am. I'm not a charity project. I am my parents' daughter, and I have the strength they gave me to stand up for myself. If you're going through something similar, just know that your value isn't defined by what anyone else says about you, even if they're supposed to be your family. Like this video if you think I did the right thing by taking everything back and leaving Sarah with nothing. Make sure to subscribe for more stories like this. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I go too far, or did she get exactly what she deserved? I'll see you all in the next story.